Hello, this is Heather Morse. This is my capstone presentation. The purpose of this presentation is to share the research project conducted in EDRS 8000 and EDRS 8900. The title of this research project is An Evaluation of Students' Perception of Thinking Maps in the Middle School Mathematics Classroom. By way of background information, Thinking Maps is an adopted program at Mount Zion Middle School and a key component of the school improvement plan. The school has been using Thinking Maps for approximately 3 years. The purpose of this study is to examine students' perception towards thinking maps in the math classroom. In order to evaluate students' perception of thinking maps, this research focused on the following research questions. What is students' perception of thinking maps in the math classroom, and how do students use thinking maps in the math classroom? Review of literature. Organizing thinking is critical for today's learners. The ability to think critically is important in our world of complex problems. Concept mapping is one form of organizing thought. Concept mapping has been found to be an effective tool in an educational setting. In the math classroom, concept mapping has been proven to support complex problem solving and evaluating student understanding. Software, web-based programs, and mobile apps have been developed to facilitate the construction of concept maps. These electronic platforms have been more effective in supporting student engagement, analysis, and revision of concept maps. Thinking maps were developed by David Harrell to simplify thinking processes to 8 visual representations. Much like concept maps, they support knowledge construction and analysis of knowledge. In contrast to concept maps, thinking maps are limited to 8 representations that encompass all thought processes across content and grade level. Much of the literature found on thinking maps focus on the effectiveness of thinking maps by measuring student achievement on standardized tests or pre-post test analysis. There is limited research in examining students' perception towards concept mapping. The literature does indicate that students that use electronic concept mapping have enhanced learning attitudes and willingness to learn. There is a significant gap in the literature on examining students' perception towards using thinking maps. The methodology used in this research was the qualitative case study research design. A qualitative case study research design includes focus group interviews and classroom observations. In addition, quantitative data was collected through surveys to support the qualitative data. This study involved 8th grade students in the same rural middle school in northwest Georgia. Students have used thinking maps for the last 2 years in all content areas. Students have used thinking maps in the 8th grade math classroom all school year, and the Thinking Maps electronic platform was introduced into the researchers' classroom in January. The focus group interviews consisted of 6 students. I used maximal variation sampling in an effort to include all the school subgroups. The survey respondents consisted of 57 students. The survey was open to all students, and all responses were voluntary. As you can see from the chart, 3 female and 3 males participated in the interviews. In addition, 2 of the 4 participants were in special education. There were 4 Caucasian and 2 African Americans that participated. The questionnaire was offered to all 8th grade students. 57 students voluntarily completed the survey. From the table, you can see that there were 33 females and 24 males that participated. As a side note, the other category is significantly high. On the survey, I used the term Caucasian instead of white, and several students reported after the survey that they did not know what Caucasian meant and selected other instead. The focus group interviews were conducted with 6 students in pairs of 2. The following questions were asked. Can you tell me about using thinking maps in the math classroom? What has been your experience with using thinking maps in the math classroom? In your opinion, what is the purpose of thinking maps in the math classroom? How do you feel about using thinking maps in the math classroom? When you hear your teacher mention thinking maps, what is your reaction? And if you could generate thinking maps on the computer, would you rather use the computer than paper? Why or why not? In addition, classroom observations were conducted using the observation form shown below. The survey was a 19-item questionnaire that focused on 3 specific areas: the percentage of time thinking maps are generated by a specific individual, students' perception of usefulness of thinking maps for taking notes, critical thinking, and solving problems, and students' perception of the usefulness of specific thinking maps. The interview and observation data was analyzed using Creswell's 6 steps for coding. The following emerging themes were found: positive feelings toward thinking maps, negative feelings toward thinking maps, purpose and use of thinking maps, specific maps identified, and perception toward the electronic thinking map. Survey data obtained from the questionnaire was analyzed by the following means. The raw data was converted to percentages, and student perception questions converted from a Likert scale to numerical score and central tendencies were analyzed. The results. There were mixed responses based on the interview data. Students viewed thinking maps primarily as a tool for taking notes. Responses based on whether or not they like taking notes with thinking maps. The primary source of information from the thinking maps is the teacher, and students perceive that thinking maps is beneficial for solving problems, writing explanations, and higher order thinking skills. In addition, from the interviews, students felt that thinking maps helped them break problems down, allowed the students to see the problems better, and understand what the problem is asking. Students were also highly favorable of the electronic thinking maps platform since it created the shapes for the students. In conclusion, thinking maps have received positive perception from the students. The teacher should examine classroom practices to promote independent creation of thinking maps without the teacher. And just as a post-reflection, this was a unique opportunity to engage in educational research in the classroom setting. I gained valuable information that I can use to adjust instructional practices related to the use of thinking maps. Thank you for watching my presentation.